Yes, hi Scott. Welcome back to our 18th talk.
Thank you for having me at the 18th time.
Yeah. So I was just sharing with you, I want to bring this topic up of love. Love. And you know what I know? I remember that actually this comes now when I was studying the fourth way and Gurdjieff was saying this that, hey, words like love or truth or friendship or religion, they mean very different things depending on where you are at on the level of consciousness.
Totally.
So love can be like codependent. Oh my God, where have you gone? Are you going to leave me? I love you so much. I can't live without you. Codependent, toxic, obsessive, or it can a whole range of, I because I really love you. I want what is the highest best for you, and I set you free. It's a very different it's a different love. And then,
Totally.
going into the Rumi, the love of the divine and the Sufis and the love of God. And it seems like humanity talked about it for ages. I mean, even Plato, Aristotle, they had a whole thing on that, like 4 different styles of love. Yeah, it's a little difficult subject for me because also, clinically speaking or psychologically, I suffer from this called kind of attachment wounds. Like, let's say, attachment disruption in childhood, or let's say abandonment in some way, or disrupted attachment of the primary care provider. Sounds so clinical. So this creates what's called love wound. Like, so. Well, how about we start on when I was studying with David Hawkins. He kind of opened me up to be interested in this love, because before I was more like just awareness, witnessing. Love wasn't interesting to me. It was almost like some rejection. I can see it was my childhood wounding and trauma. But Hawkins would say things like, "Hey, love is not. It's not an emotion. It's a kind of it's not a feeling like sadness or joy or shame or something. It's not a feeling. I mean, one can have some sensation in the body connected to that, like a yummy fuzzy feeling. But he was saying that, and other non-dual teachers, they speak about love is our true nature. Love is like, yeah. So what's your intellectual and experiential take on love, or your understanding of it throughout your path, or you know
When I was listening to you, I was thinking, even 3 years ago, the love, it was different than the way that I experienced it 6 years ago. Because when you were saying different levels, you went from the ego, like real strict, separate self kind of love, to then you talked about Rumi expanded. But there's so many gradations in that. It's like it's ever to me. It's not my understanding of my experience of that has changed as my own process has gotten deeper. To go into the repressions and the trauma, for example, it's changed. I can definitely tell you that the way I talk about love now or experience it is very different than like 3 4 years ago. So I just cannot. I can see all the different ways that we're talking about it, but let me talk about the way that it's the only way that I know about it now, the highest form of it for myself. I can't say that there's not going to be a deeper experience of that, because 3 years ago I might have said that. I can't say that, but here's where I'm at with it right now. I feel like there is the sense of love, the non-dual love that one experiences when you see through separation. For me, the heart opening had to happen. Everything before the heart opening was the entire definition and experience of love changed in that moment. that moment was really defining for me, because after that, the heart area was not constricted. That energy was not there, and it was just open. And but it wasn't just a feeling, because you mentioned feeling, because that, I know what you mean by that feeling of love. It was that expansiveness that in some ways is not the mind. It's not the mind. It's something experiential here. The mind doesn't have any place in that. Like when that opens, it's not known up here what that's like, but it's a real experiential thing. And people talk about it, and I hope that that never gets woo-wooed away, because it's an actual experiential realization, the heart opening. Because you can hear it from one angle and think, yeah, heart opening, spirituality, whatever. That's because you haven't experienced it yet. That's why you're saying that. Or if somebody would say that. But it is an actual experiential thing. And it's not, to me, the same as recognizing that you're not your thoughts, or the kind of head awakening that sometimes gets talked about, where it's a dry kind of recognition. I mean, it's not dry, it's very peaceful, it's very open and expansive, but it isn't here yet. Something here hasn't. So I want to talk about that. Is like, that was a big change there, just that opening. Then it became impossible to define love, because it felt like that, like the reality was just, it is love. It's like that expansiveness that is here, is this. I don't know how to say that. It is this experience, this whole entire reality is like somehow the opening of that into some sort of non-dual is definitely an experience, and it's never left. But what happened is the repressions and the trauma that didn't get processed, I think they started to come to the surface, and then that sense of non-dual love got drowned out a little bit through that. And then even during the chronic pain, must have been some sort of transformation into some sort of deeper knowing of love, because that, I couldn't feel the expansive. I could feel it, but when you've got something in your spine that's radiating nerve energy, it obviously can obscure some of that, But that was a transformation happening for me. I was contacting anger and learning how to be okay with that emotion after years of not accessing that. So as I step on the other side of that, the love is even more embodied, in the sense that I can see now that, like, until I can love this anger, until I can love all the states, all the emotions that could possibly come through this opening, then I can't really know the depth. I couldn't know the depth of love that I know now. And it's so much, to me, is an emotional thing too. It's not just the heart opening, but in that, whatever I'm still against within myself, I'm going to be against it in another person. And that's going to create a sense of separation energetically with me, just on the emotional level. With whatever I cannot experience and feel, or I'm against, I'm going to be against it in some way, or projecting or shadowing out in some other way to someone else. So that affects the capacity to live the experience of love in relationship. It's one thing to have an experience. So what? Because in relationship, where we think there's still some leftover pockets of separation that we don't even know are there. Even in the awakening, you don't know are there, because they're deeply down here, held back. That energetic separation has gotten seen through even more. It's not the separation that I saw through in 2007. It was like, that's okay, that's good, but this is like embodied in some way. I don't know how to explain it, but it's definitely not the same realization that I had before. I have had through since that time, as it changed. And now it's even more impossible to describe, but I can just point to it by saying, that's what we're doing, point to it by saying, whatever I don't love within myself, whatever, talk about self-love. When I say self, I mean the big T self, that which comes through awareness, but shows up as Scott's mechanism, right? Scott's mechanism of holding back, whatever. All I can do is point to it, like it's just it's so experiential that if I start talking about it, the mind can get dreamy about it, like, and then we're back in the mind. What we're trying to do with KI is experience back, down here, where you're going to access that barrier, repression barrier, and sense of separation that can subtly operate, even if you're living as awareness, it can still subtly operate. So that's been the change for me, because I've been living as awareness, so to speak, since 2007, but my experience of love has not been the same through that. So that's what I would have to say. And then more to come, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yes. Well, Yeah, I remember that even like I was 16 or 17 and I encountered some Taoist Qigong where, and I was in a mountain with my girlfriend at the time somewhere, and she left, and I was doing this inner smile. I don't know, some technique which is good for the body, whatever. I was the beginning of seeking or being interested in. So I was doing this inner smile, and to smile at all the organs and the smile of all the vertebra, and so it was the first time I did this thing. And then after like some time, it was like, it's just, I didn't know what it was, but it's just love and peace, but like not for my girlfriend or something, just love, I guess, if we were to put a word. Yeah, bliss, man. It was Ananda, I guess I was experiencing. And then I was like, whoa. And then I was like, all right, I need to do this again tomorrow. I need to do this, man. I like that. So it started to be like, I want it, I need it, I seek it. And I would start to do the inner smile again. And it didn't work. And so anyway, my point here is that I think also from my life through different, let's say, after a lot of meditation or some psychedelic, intentional psychedelic experience, or anyway, this I guess, a state, and I don't want to call it a state, but it's some experience of, I guess, love for no reason, not for someone, love, and that's, yeah, well, as you described, this kind of, then it will go away, it'll go away. And then I encountered, David Hawkins teaching, and then he was saying that, hey man, love is not a feeling. It's not a feeling. Love is what we are. And actually, if you want to do something about it, maybe cultivate this attitude of, which, this is like a just pedagogical, but cultivate this, benevolence, loving, like as we talked last time, to have of goodwill towards all life, including oneself and the beetle and all of that, and see where there's not happening. These are the blocks, and then whatever processing you need to do to let it go. He was saying that, and that was helpful. And also he was saying something interesting about drugs, because he also experienced drugs and substances. And he was saying that, you take MDMA or take heroin or you take something, and then you suddenly feel love or absolute peace, and you think that this powder gives me this love and peace. But he says, no, what happened is that powder temporarily disables all the lower energy field of, let's say, resentment, hatred, apathy, whatever, temporarily, and then it's left what you are. And there's a big relief. But then you are cheating, then you have to have a credit card bill now, and so you go down. And so but the most reliable now, I mean, I can reliably, let's say, access that more was through this understanding, but not just mental understanding and knowingness that you and people I meet are me, in terms of our fundamental identity, the presence, this, anyway. So that seems to me to bring most reliably, when I remember that or I tune into that, then it's like, rather than caution or fear or wanting, there is this, I guess, what they call unconditional love.
Anything else there?
You are pointing that you offer some path. Well, okay, to process repression and trauma, and then you can't, if many people want to experience love or peace, and you are saying, well, until you love, do not reject your feelings, love your feelings. I think this is more like recent for me, influenced by your teaching, to to not reject the sadness, not reject the loneliness, to not reject it, and not only not reject it, but to really kind of not resist it, almost love it. I mean, it's a little bit. So that's the path you offer. Can you speak more about this, like the importance of this?
Even if I walk around with the context that and I are the same, the childhood, more unconscious things
Yeah.
come to the surface, and those have to be dealt with too, because it's hard for the adult mind or the contextualized mind to override these very strongly imprinted patterns within us.
Yeah.
So even if I had that intention or even that experience, like in any moment, like especially with someone I'm close to, like my husband, it's those old childhood patterns that come to the surface for survival reasons. So at that point, for me, it felt like in those moments that coming back to the context or the scene was sometimes bypassing it
Mhm,
for me. And
mhm.
so therefore I saw that then no longer bypassing it and processing it. And when I say love it, I just mean get to the mechanism that doesn't want it there. Just get to that mechanism, see that, and then it's not really loving it like I love you. I love you because you can't even see the mechanism of repression, for example, or trauma. It's like I'm just saying that deal with all that. Deal with all of that, because then that affects relationship, because then there's less of that childhood stuff coming to try to take over, control those moments, whether it's attachment, like you say, the fear, or some other trauma that keeps it reoccurring, or some held back something. Like for me, I like both. I mean, I did those practices, heart meditation, and just listening to teachers and teachings talk about the context around everything you're saying, and it was helpful, definitely. But just my path was, I kept just getting triggered over very old stuff that it's almost like when it's coming up, it has the say. It's no matter what in that moment, for a moment, it has the say. And so my question is, like, can we love that? What is that? that's coming up in there in a certain moment. I feel like if we love that and if we process that, we don't even have to have the context anymore. Because I feel like sometimes the context is trying to point us to something, like in our experience, it's trying to tell us, but the experiential knowing of it is so different than just knowing it here. And I know that Robert or whoever else didn't mean just keep it here. He meant it's an experiential thing. But for me, there was like a little barrier between that and the actual experiencing of it until I could access more of this stuff. And like, when I think of shame, for example, love, this is a part of ourself that we hide from people and ourselves. For example, shame. So if I'm going to section that off, compartmentalize that, I'm going to say that it's all love. See, it's all love. What about that? What about that? If it's all love, then is that love? Or is that excluded from the conversation in some case, in some way? That's all I'm pointing to, is if you go to those areas where you wouldn't be inclined to go, because those are the areas that you're avoiding and holding down in the unconscious anyway, you wouldn't be inclined to go. But if we're going to say that it's all love, the reality is love, if we're going to say that, we ought to put our money where our mouth is and actually go to those areas where we don't inhabit those areas in love. We inhabit those areas in privacy and secrecy and shame and hiding and holding back. That's what I'm saying. So I think there's just been a deeper recognition for that for me, just by going to those places. And I think you are too, in that, like, seeing that. But if somebody can get there without processing the way we do, I say, go for it. Like, go for it. I just needed to process some stuff, though, again, that was deeply hidden and not loved.
Yeah, yeah. There's this. Yeah, I mean, I did a serious glimpses, realization beyond the mind about this, and multiple times. But then there was so much of the opposite in my system that it didn't hold water. I remember first time I've done intentionally some psychedelic journey, and at that time, to me, love was like, I don't care. I was into consciousness, witnessing, awareness. Love seemed like too wet and too not not to be trusted. Now, 3 days ago, I do some love repression, which we're going to get into it, love repression work, and then it comes this. Oh, I don't trust. I don't trust. I don't trust love. I don't trust my love. I don't trust this, which is connected to these childhood imprints, you know.
Yeah.
But in the journey, that psychedelic journey, it was I there was some healing of the childhood. Actually, there was a healing of the childhood thing where, you know, my family, there was not much there was no expression of affection. I mean, people were loving in a non-affectionate way, let's say. They didn't expressing, they didn't say it. It was like, and communism, and everybody's serious and stuff, and like, so in that journey, it's part of the process was I would just exchange I love you back and forth with the guide 80 times, 100 times, but just the person, the guide knew that I had some and it was like it brought a lot of stuff to just say I love you, but I did it many times anyway. And then I remembered it. I realized that there's like, when I say I love you, and I realized, oh my God, they all mean the same thing. I means love, it means you. And it was like, oh yeah. But then the next day, you know, love repression, business as usual, separate and all of that. So it's definitely, as they say in non-duality, that, you know, I think about love or awareness, and I think that they are the same, man. But it's like that you don't need to build the sun. You don't need to create the sun. I think a lot of many people trying to create the sun, but no, the sun is already there, man. It's just there are clouds covering it. The work is to remove the clouds, and then the sun, which was already there, I don't know, presence or love, is going to effortlessly shine forth.
I love that you just shared that about the love repression, because that's a really good way to talk about this. I would love for you to come back and us have another interview when you're further down that work, just to see how, because I feel like that was gonna open something up there. I think you're already seeing it, like it's
Yeah,
definitely opening up. Yeah.
yeah, we can touch upon it because that's, I mean, it's very relevant, and not at all philosophical and theoretical, but I mean, it's interesting. You talk about repression, and you know, it makes sense for people that, oh, my anger, I repressed my anger because I couldn't express it, it was scary or it's not allowed, or I repressed my joy as a kid because it was serious, nobody was joyful, and I repressed my fear because my father wanted to be tough, whatever. I repressed my sadness because you know, don't be a pussy or whatever programs. But then love, man, it's but then I could see that, yeah, I mean, that for me, in my case, somehow, and especially this, what they call attachment wounds, you know, love wounds, where something happens and then there's a and then there's a I'm not going to go there anymore. I don't trust that. I don't trust that. I don't need that. I don't trust love. I don't need love. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Deep down, that's not true.
No.
So there's like very mixed impulses, and in psychology they talk about this anxious attachment style, avoidant attachment style, and so I think these are all, you know, attachment traumas and stuff.
Yeah.
And I discovered what you call these trauma commands. I mean, it's I guess anyway, who is watching this, either are already doing this work or whatever, they may be doing this work, but I really discovered trauma commands.
We should explain that a little.
Yeah, can you explain? I mean, I can explain, but like I'm interviewing you here, so can you explain a little bit about these trauma commands? What is that? And then I can go into what I discovered.
Was yours a repression command, or you tell me?
You know, yeah, I think ultimately, these are conceptual thing. I think trauma command and repression command and
Yes,
kind of the
but just
same.
say,
But this
to
idea of
define it,
command.
what was the command, and then I'll know what was the
Okay,
command.
so for me it was when I was looking into this love using KI and it came this like two opposing thing, like leave me alone, get away from me. When I will bring love in, there will be
Yeah,
some deeply down subconscious, get away from me, leave me
yeah,
alone.
trauma command.
And on the other side, don't leave me, don't leave me, don't go,
Mhm.
don't leave me, you know. And other things like, I noticed like at some point deep down, blah, 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 and like things somatic intense stuff, and see this like, oh, like never let anybody in, don't let anybody in, don't, which is like, see my father and stuff. I'm talking about this stuff. Can
Yeah.
you give a context to this trauma or repression commands? Because it's not known really in psychotherapy at all.
Well, if you listen to the research, they talk about trauma responses,
Yeah.
fight, flight, freeze. But again, that's intellectual, just like our trauma commands. But if you,
Like
okay,
that freeze
experience.
on. Yeah.
What is it in experience is that if something's happening in relationship, I'm I'm reacting to it out of some conditioning that I have, like the trauma response. Somebody leaves me, my response is whatever it is, like the what feeling or whatever comes up. But we don't see what's behind it. We're unconscious to what's driving it. So we see the response, and even the research says trauma comes up as a reaction, not a memory. So the most that we get is just like this doubled over in pain or like whatever. But
Trigger.
yeah, but under that, we discover commands, which are just like it's like a nervous system mechanism, just like you said, that's actually continuously running in those situations, especially that actually informs your system to do something or not do something in order to survive.
Yeah.
So that I'll just ask this definition. So for you, get away is a survive. It's like a command coming from your nervous system to protect you,
Yeah.
and then that comes up as a trauma response for people. That's what they might see, some trauma response, like fight, flight, freeze, whatever. But
Yeah.
internally, it's an intelligent command in the nervous system. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like a set of short words, not too intellectual at all, maybe 2 or 3 words. And,
Right.
and although you might not, you don't hear them, you're not hear them, but if one goes in like some awareness, somatic inquiry, KI, that energy, if we were to mine it out, that energy, what does it say? Get away from me.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's, and what I like about this is that, okay, so what's the point about that? Now you find it, and now what? What's the point? The point, this about processing trauma is that it's almost like the word "get away from me" or "don't leave me." It's not just words. It's like a lot of charge,
Mhm.
emotional energy, memory.
Sometimes chronic pain.
Yeah, it's charged with all of that. So that's a going to the heart of the trauma, and we're not going to go into it now, but using those commands to even bring them out and witness them, and to keep doing that, although it may be highly uncomfortable, because that's the thing I want to avoid the most. Somehow there's the
Yeah.
most unpleasant thing. I'm trying to avoid this shark all my life, and now I'm going into the shark tank, and I'm like, come, let's do it. But by that, it somehow it discharges that, and yeah, I can see that it's a shortcut towards that for people who can handle this. I wouldn't do this. I work with clients. You know, I wouldn't
Yeah.
do this with people. Many people.
Some people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people. Can I tie something in just for people watching it to make it experiential? Is this ties into what I was saying, because these mechanisms, even a trauma command like stay away, that's intelligent because it's actually protecting you from feeling something that was scary before. It's like very intelligent, protective.
Yeah.
And so this is where we get to not embodying certain emotions. And so the depth of love that you experience when you come out of repression is deeper than before, because this mechanism is being seen. And under that intelligent mechanism are feelings. It could be any number of feelings, sadness, grief, hurt, that you're protecting your system from feeling. But then that creates a lack of embodiment. That creates, in some cases, we're not even protecting ourselves from it, because then it becomes chronic pain or illness. So it's a farce to say that we're actually avoiding this, because it's actually creating a manifestation in disease and illness. So people need to hear that too, because they might say, why should I do this if it's painful or if it's difficult? Well, that's why, because you're avoiding that feeling, but it isn't avoiding you. It's there. And so accessing it and that command brings that through. And then there's just a deeper, again, that's breaking down what I call the energetic, or like the emotional, even more that sense of separation on that level. Because before we even know words, we feel. That's just natural human emotion. We feel before we have language calling it anything. Mm-hmm. So I think that anything that's blocking the natural flow of that energy we're gonna pay the price for. See, and we are paying the price for it. But that's wanted to link that up to people, because they might say, why should I do that? Because you just said that's difficult, that's painful. And I'm saying this is why. Yeah. Right here with all this.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I like how we put it, this psychology. They discovered this good psychology, Peter Levine, trauma response. I guess they started studying after the First World War. People were like, PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You're saying, hey, this is intellectual. Yeah, it's true. But now if you zoom into it, you may find in each one of them a trauma command that is actually very practical and experiential. In my experience, it's not. Mm-hmm. And it's the way I get it, that so if the trauma and the trauma aftermath, which now we are, and I saw this guy, Thomas Hubel, he was saying that trauma is frozen potential. I like that a lot.
Really? Yeah.
Frozen potential, and then creates big sense of separation. Actually, we are, non-duality, trying to see through the veil of separation and to see the oneness. And we are revving the mental for most people, because non-duality is more like the Jnani path, the higher reasoning. We are revving the thing, and okay, everybody's understanding, it's all consciousness. But the trauma creates the most sense of separation. So, and that has much more shares in a company, like deep intellectual thoughts, right?
Yes, totally.
So like the trauma separation state of identity, it's almost like a sweater. And the trauma command, it's almost like, oh, you pick a thread now, and then you start pulling, and then you start unraveling.
Yeah.
Like that. So I'm really excited about doing this. Also hide, I can totally see, and also some of them are passed on, man. I can, as I was doing this work, at some point it goes there, the shark is right there, which is me, and is eating me, and we are eating each other, whatever. And then I see my dad, and I'm like, oh my God, he lived like this all his life. Don't show any emotion.
Yep.
Hold it down. And then it's rage and grief, and hide, hide, be careful,
yep.
Hide, have to hide, be careful. I guess
I don't think
that's why you can't go to I mean, those need to be dealt with thoroughly. And then you are saying that if this is happening, then love will be much more accessible, and you don't need to.
I love the fact that you mentioned your dad, because I saw the same thing with my mother's family. Like the repression of anger and all the emotions on that side had an effect on how I showed up in this world. And that's why it's hard to understand when people are saying non-duality when you're not aware of that. But when you're just sort of just doing practices that don't go there, because that's still affecting you. The way that your family was, probably even through the DNA, right? Like passed on, but also modeled, learned. But that's a big thing. Like, And I found the same thing when in this first time I saw it, when I was just doing work on, I forgot, some sort of repression. And then here's my mom's family showed up and they all had that. They all had the same effect. They all had the same just manner around everything. There was no joy in the family. Like, and then my dad's side of the family was nothing but joy and anxiousness, right?
Yeah.
So that's in me too. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want people to see that it does go that deep. Actually, it can go that deep, where you can see that. And also there's a collective thing on, for example, shame. I felt that when I met that within myself, not just I have to hide, but I'm disgusting. It didn't even sound like my voice. It sounded like a chorus of the collective, almost like telling all of humanity on some level, there's something deeply wrong with you, so you will stay controlled. It's almost like if it were in a government, it would feel very oppressive, but it's coming from within. It's like we learn it, and we learn to like on some level shame ourselves in a really deep way. And it's so collective, and that it's just embedded into our, and I felt it as a collective voice, actually, as almost like humanity saying, and that was a big thing to come across, to see. Yeah.
I see this a lot with clients, this, and psychology is aware of that. I'm not sure, I guess with some relative success, this negative inner critic, the negative voice in the head, which if we go follow its origin, it's like lack of love in childhood, abuse, criticized, so some trauma, the create deficiency story. So now I have my criticizing parent lives in my head and is talking seemingly to me. It's me talking to me, like, you are bad, look at you, you are never. So this, and I have many clients that are actually, they have kids, and they are good, loving. They don't do this to their kids. They don't do this to them. They are loving, and they are raising them in some kind of more conscious, attuned way. However, there's this thing in the head that hasn't been investigated. And I'm telling them, like, dude, if you were to talk to your kid as the voice is talking to you, you'll fuck him up, man. Like, and they're like, oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's, and here comes like this topic of self-love, and then, so because people go to psychologist or therapist, even a regular non-dual, non-somatic, and then they come with like, oh, there's this negative voices in my head, and the guy says, yeah, I need to love yourself and whatever. So
yeah, I have a few things about that.
Yeah, self-love. I think there are different levels of it, and different levels of it, more like lower level, higher level, non-dual level of self-love. So let's get into it a little bit.
Well, I just remember being in the 12-step program, and that was me telling myself, which was fine. It was that level of consciousness where you're telling yourself that you love yourself. You don't really know your experience yet. You're still very identified with mind, or, you're living in that ego state, but that's all you can do in that state, because you don't know anything else. In a sense, it's like all you can do is try to change the programming in some way, or pick up something that changes the way you think about yourself, self-love. Like, it's a kind of a story, and it may actually help on that level. You don't even have to vilify it. It's like, but all I would say is, if you're at that level, that's the only love you know, which is the feelings that you get from people or relationship. That's the only love you know. And the only love you, or self-love, is telling yourself that you love yourself. Can you be open that there's a greater depth of love available? Can you just be open? That's all you know. You can't see what you can't see. You can't feel what you can't feel. You can't know what you can't know at that level. But can you be open to that there's a greater depth of love available? And then that gets into the more, the spiritual insights and realizations, where you start to not identify so much with that mind. You don't think of the mind as really you as much as you did. And so and then there's the heart opening that I won't go over that again, but that's an element of it. Like, that's what I mean, a greater depth of love. Or it just seems to be like, I don't know, is there going to be one place where someone says, this is the greatest depth of love possible? I don't know. I mean, because I would have said that 3 years ago, but all I'm saying to everyone, no matter where you're at, can you be open to there might be a greater depth of love. That's all I'm saying, because that's what it's taught me. Like, it isn't a static thing for me. It isn't like I know love. That's an idea. I don't know love. I don't know it here. Not really. Not really. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, the greater depth of love is where you go from the self-talk of the ego, where you feel like you only really know it here, to like you get to the depth of love and you don't really know it here, but you feel it. It's experiential, and it's not based on separation so much at that level. And then it seems to be like all these gradations in between, where people might stop at a certain place and they think, but this is the realization of love. But that's just because of where you're at. That, there's a greater depth there. In some way you might access it. That's all I'm saying, is stay open. And I'm saying that to myself, because anything that's static for me becomes an idea, a memory, a philosophy, a belief system, a paradigm. That's not what's showing up here in the greater depth of love, to be needing to hold on to these paradigms. It's to be open and experience something else happening. Like, it's really cannot be captured. The deeper you go, the less you can capture it. I feel like you can say very poetic things, but at the same time, none of the poetic things capture it when there's experiential depth of love there. That's what I'm just trying to say. There's something deeper for all of us than what we may know now.
Yeah, this comes back, this kind of Gurdjieff guy who he was saying, okay, so somebody who is totally asleep, there's some kind of love, and then somebody who is starting seeking is a love is slightly different than somebody who has found the path and is a practitioner now. Is love is different. Somebody who has some partial awakening, love, it means something else, and then there are levels above that. So I like that. That's not, it depends where we are at. And he was saying this thing like man machine, he called it the man machine, meaning that I totally identify with the body, mind, and lack of self-awareness. Said in sleep you cannot love. That's not possible. So in order to really have real love, one needs to become more awake. And he was offering these suggestions like, hey man, start with the plant. If you want to do something, he didn't want to go into that because he thought it's too it's going to be airy-fairy and whatever. He was trying people to start observing their shit and become more present and this and that. But he said, if you want to do something, start with the plant, take care of the plant, do this, it's easy. Then if you get into it, then you get a dog, get a little cat, and then and practice that, and then
work up to
humans.
Yeah.
But coming back to the negative voice in the head, like I don't know where I found this, but it was very helping me, and I use it clinically to explain people self-love as not the highest level, but it's not the highest level, but it's indispensable. The lower level is like this. I don't know where I heard this, but like self-love is to be kind and loving towards oneself in spite of shortcomings and fuck-ups. And so just do that. So this will, and whenever a negative voice in the head, if you're really committed to this, it's like, oh, okay. So to be gentle towards oneself, even if we failed, we create suffering, okay, yeah, to clean it up, to be in integrity, to process, but to not beat oneself up, man, because that really stops any possibility. That's what I see as the lower level of self-love, which is actually a very high level.
Right, for some people, right.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't want to talk too much levels, but it's hard to connect that in experience, because it can still feel like self-talk a little bit, at a higher level. It can still feel like, because first of all, the question is, I couldn't stop I call it deficiency story. So I don't have that negative self-talk anymore. That to me was the deficiency story. there's levels even to the self-talk though, because as you go into the body, even if you don't have a conscious deficiency story, there could be a childlike pattern there that's against whatever. Like, so there's different levels of that, but I don't know. For me, I couldn't turn it off. That's the thing. I had trouble turning it off. And that might just be my experience. So when they say, just stop doing that to yourself, I couldn't actually really do that myself. So I had to go a different way, which is inquiry. If someone can do it, that's fine, as long as I think that they're not, again, bypassing is all. That's the only thing.
Okay, so how I make it this practical and how I look at it this, okay, be kind and loving towards self in spite of shortcomings and fuck ups. I get it what you're saying. Where's the rubber going to hit the road? Because if you try to do it, you can't do it. I get it. But I see this statement as a spiritual program or as a deprogramming program that is a remedy towards the man, look at you, you are terrible, you're bad.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing this on the conscious level and tell the person, hey, first of all, start doing some meditation too, because if you don't, witnessing, then you have no idea that this is talking in your head anyway, and there's nothing.
Yeah.
So first train some mindfulness, let's say. Then whenever you catch this, try to replace the negative program with this new program, spiritual program, which is more helpful. And meaning, like, at least stop it, catch the voice and be like, no, no, I'm not going there, come back to the present, whatever. So I think it's helpful on the top level. However, they need to do deficiency story work, deprogramming, trauma, because that will discharge the voice in the head.
But they might not be ready for that deeper work. So it might be exactly what they need is what you're saying. Because where's someone, and they couldn't even go deeper if you tried at that place. So you give them what works for them, right? Where they're at. Yeah.
But also, the mind, some aspect of the mind, the higher mind, it's been poo-pooed in non-duality, or say, oh, this is just the mind, there's thoughts. And Francis was talking about this, like, hey, yeah, but the mind is very helpful, man. And some aspect of the mind can be very helpful, because if you use your intelligence deeply, you can see through some distortion. So what I use with clients is that I told them about be kind and loving in spite of shortcoming, and then there have been these tests where this doctor, I don't know, Dr. Yamamoto or something, with the water, and where he takes this, I think we talked about it, takes these seeds and then have people say, I love you, thank you so much, I love you, seeds of rice. And then somebody else says, I hate you, and somebody else says nothing. And then they tested scientifically, and depending on what they were exposed to, the seeds of rice, they are very different. And the one they got, I hate you, they got rotten and they don't develop. So that's a fact, yeah. And now, that's what we are doing when we have this, oh, look at you, I never amount to anything, you're a piece of shit, you're broken. It's like voodoo on ourselves. So then just talking to an intelligent person, dude, that's what you're doing. You're aware of that. Study this, watch this video, do that. They could be like, oh, yeah, wow. So there's more incentive to catch it. It's something to disrupt it a little bit,
Yeah.
Through intelligence.
Totally. It's what I'm doing on YouTube almost every day, is I'm putting forth the context for people who have not yet experienced the non-dual piece with the deep somatic processing, repression, trauma. They haven't had the experience yet, so I'm giving them the spiritual context so that they can hold the context and become open. Just like if you say to someone at a different level, whenever you see that negative thought, replace it with this. So what I find though is that's actually necessary, because I had to read and listen to teachers about non-duality and get the context, but then make it into experience. Then it becomes experience. And then when it comes to experience, you can kind of let go of the context that led you there and live in the experience. And then that opens you up for different contexts, because perspectives are constantly changing. Everybody has one, even when they pretend like they don't. Like even non-dual teachers that say that there's no self or no concept, that's their perspective. Like everybody has a perspective. Everybody's talking with their perspective. But can we use the perspectives as just like, they're like tools instead of truths? So they're just at different levels. These tools come in to say, now look at it this way. And then that invites you into experience. By using the context, there's a tool that invites you into experience, and then it becomes more of a lived experience. Then you don't have to hold on to the context unless you're trying to teach others. See, because you don't have to hold on to it as a truth. You remain open to the next unfolding then by letting go of the context. No context arises. It's going to take you deeper if it does, and then there comes the experience. And that's how, to me, transformation kind of happens. So, yeah, that's how I really feel about it. But like when we're in meetings and we're talking about this stuff, I'm aware that everybody's in a different place. So I'm trying not to put forth a final context. I want to meet people more in the inquiry and just one-on-one, or you can really meet people where they're at instead of telling them so much. I mean, I've already given them so much context by the time they get to the members area.
Yeah.
They know what we're doing there. I keep talking about it. I absolutely agree. Like the context is part of the thing. Ken Wilber says this. He says that every spiritual method, no matter how experiential, has a conceptual framework with it. Every single one of them. So that goes along with the experience. There's the framework and the experience, the understanding and the experience, and they go along with each other. There's some really good books around this too, like Stephen Katz, I think, or Greg Good has written about it, where how these concepts, these contexts arise for us to have deep realizations. And then when we have the realization, even the framework falls away. And like we're having really direct experience, but then we come out of it and we interpret it. And so there's a lot of literature around this too. Like it's pretty well known, I think, as just part of the way it is.
Yeah, and in the traditions, actually, they speak about this. Like in Zen, they say, I guess, about this using the higher mind. And what I mean by that is not just like intelligence, our intelligence, yeah. Using the higher mind to dispel some aspects of ignorance. And they're saying in the Zen, they say that it is the wind that brought the clouds to cover the sun. And it is the wind that will dispel the clouds. And the wind here is the mind. Like you had all this mind creating all this shit, and you can still use some of the higher level of the mind to deconstruct them. Or in non-duality, that like, you know, you're kind of feeding things on the fire, you're putting things on the fire, but you use a stick. You use a stick to put them on the fire. And then at some point you need to throw the stick too, throw the stick. But sometimes you need to pick it up again and put some more things on the fire, you know?
Right. And sometimes you have to throw the sticks away because the ones you've held on too tightly, because like with me, this whole thing that everything arises to awareness is a context that came into my life that helped me. And then it became limiting because then I realized there were certain things that don't arise to awareness. And those are the things that are repressed and so I had to throw away those sticks so that something else could arise. And that's why you hear me saying that not everything arises to awareness, a new context. Right. Yeah.
I'm just realizing that I was a collector of sticks. Trying to find the most ultimate sticks, you know? And,
yeah.
And what you're saying about Buddha, I think, you know, all these sticks are coming in my head. He was saying, hey, get into the raft of the Dharma to cross to the other shore.
Yeah.
But once you got to the other shore, fucking left the raft there, okay? Or in the Zen, they were like, hey, you knock at the gate with this brick, and when the gate opens, you can stop knocking with the, you know, so some kind of some fixed teaching, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let's go back to, so I guess, a deeper level of self-love. So so the first level is more like the ego, to have the ego to be less vicious towards oneself. I guess if the ego, the selfing, is very negatively charged towards oneself, it's hard to do much. So we are trying to tame the ego, make it a little bit more copacetic and benevolent, you know, and which is useful. Yeah. But then I think what but that doesn't hold so much. I think it helps, but doesn't hold so much. I think that the deeper level of self-love is when we have this kind of awakening glimpses that I'm not Joe, I'm not this story in my head. I am this awareness, and this awareness is what is this? It's like it's mysterious. It's not personal. It's anyway. So having realization that I'm not Joe, and there's this thing that is like it's intelligent, it's creative, it's loving, and we start to click all this that they say the Atman and Brahman are one, like the the witnessing and is God, So, but of course, if you put, as you said, the cart before the horse, you go into that first. Oh, I'm God. I have other clients too that have been on all kind of paths, and they are slapping me with all this. I'm God. I'm Shiva. I'm Brahman. This is not real. I'm like, dude, come on, man, drop it. How about your mom there? So.
Well, it's a little bit still philosophical, but Ken Wilber talks about a conveyor belt, understanding that these are just ways we all have to move through these things. Like I remember doing positive psychology, positive thinking, positive spirituality at a certain point, because that's exactly what I needed. There would be no way that I would even really resonate with this conversation back then. But I was on a conveyor belt, sort of being lifted by the teachings of the world into some deeper knowing. And what I like about that is you don't have to see it as an ego thing. It's not like we're up, someone's up here in the conveyor belt and we're lifting. It's not below. It's like just the love is so deep that you actually want to help people along wherever they're at. Like you just love them where they're at on the conveyor belt, but you also want to show them there's another way. And when you show them a certain way, and then that's limiting, you can show them another way. Like that's like there's a conveyor belt. We're being taken into deeper recognitions of it.
Yeah, I like it. And I remember that I was studying with Laura Lucille, and although she's kind of radically on this, not going too much into personal stuff, very radical, staying very radical non-duality, not going into that. At the same time, I was talking to her personally, and she was telling me, hey, you need to take people where they're at, man. So you can't slap this on them. Wherever they're at, you need to adjust. And I hear you say that you meet them where they're at in inquiry, yeah, and in the processing, I guess, for people who in the processing sessions or facilitation. I also I started to do this because I have different people in different groups. I take them where they're at, even intellectually and in the teaching. With some people, I bring a lower teaching.
Yes.
Like some basic mindfulness. And some other people, fuck mindfulness, man. That's
right.
what I mean. So
yeah, that's why it's tricky to do it in groups, because it can be confusing to people to hear those. That's why teachers in the past would do it one-on-one. They would say to someone, this is what's true. And then they turn around and say something completely opposite, but the other person wouldn't hear it. But when you get into groups, it's tricky. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's what I was saying.
See, I don't meet those people who, everybody comes here looking for inquiry, but as a therapist, you meet some folks who are not in that yet. And so you have a wider range of folks I think you work with.
Yeah. And I don't have now anymore, because I think I don't like to do talk therapy, because I don't think it's very effective. But there are some people, I mean, even in Hakomi, and there are some people, they can't do KI, they can't do Hakomi. The level of damage in their system is so much that is not possible. So I have different setting, like in a coffee grinder, you can, so I have to do just some talk therapy, coach, which I don't like, and I don't really think it's useful, but it helps this person a little bit. It helps them. It helps them. But now at the same time, now I think there are many very good talk therapists. I'm not one of them. So there are many people who talk therapy better than me. I can do this better. So I don't have many clients like that at all. So.
Do you find a limitation then in the self-love thing with them? They get to a place where you can't help them anymore because of where they're at?
I also have some people that I would rather not work with them, but because I don't like that level of work, but I can see that they've been so hurt by life so much, and then somehow they have this strong rapport with me, and then I'm like, okay, man, okay, I'm staying. I very few like that, very few. I'm staying. I don't know, like I don't know, washing off bad karma. I don't know, service, love. I guess from love. I guess I'm doing it from love and compassion.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about love.
What do you say about that?
I have to go for the mental files.
Was there anything else though? Did you touch on everything?
I mean, I like in like Rupert Spire or other people, they say that love, like the highest love, is the recognition of our shared being.
Yes.
And then, yeah, you can think about this and it may help you. Like, what do you mean shared being? Like, what? It paves the way for something, but then when there is, as you call it, the recognition of our shared being, that is love, what is called love. And oh yeah, I have more on this. It's like that. It's a many. I mean, I guess from the wounded selfing. I need love. I need it. I need love. Give it to me. So it's about getting it. Getting it, and then it seems like, which is an endless hole. I guess. Although at the same time it doesn't seem to, because I have some people that didn't have this, they didn't get this love and being seen by their parents and being encouraged, being seen, and yeah, man, you're doing great, yeah, you like that. I think you'll be very good at that. You'll be an awesome this. I want to go for that. And so they get this nourishment. They get this nourishment later. And so, but then the hole fills up. I mean, I was like that. I that at some point I needed it less. Then you can get to a next level. But other people say that Lester Levinson, that anyway, when he was doing some deep processing about to die and all that, he realized that all the time he was seeking love and all that, and he had many women relationships, and he understood this, that he was the happiest not when Gina loved him or Zoe loved him. He was happiest when he was loving them. So it's not so much the getting of it. If you have any thoughts on this, I guess the getting love, needing love, from one level is legitimate, and another level,
It's hard to put into words for me. I'll just try. First of all, I want to come back to, if I can't love what's arising within me, it's going to be difficult for me to really connect deeply with another, like on the energetic level. I don't want to leave that piece of it out. Like there's a deeper work here. But the deficiency story, the way I feel about that is, my story was I'm unlovable. That was my story. Like that was my trigger. That was everything. So I deeply felt that I was unlovable. And that, what I knew is that for me, there was no amount of, even though I could feel better finding love in my adulthood, still that wounded childness was still there and would come out in relationship every now and then until it was seen through. So it feels like that program will never find enough love to truly satisfy it. It's not even built for that. It's actually built to not find it, actually, so that it confirms itself. It's built to not find it, not really find it.
Yeah.
So for me, to experience the deeper levels of love is one thing, is I had to put to rest that identity that that's what I am. I'm unlovable. So I couldn't get around that. I just couldn't. No matter how many ways I try to get around it through experience or practices or whatever, in the actual relationship where the rubber meets the road, that story would come up, you know. And so there's that. Definitely. And then when you have that story, you think of it, I need love because I'm lacking that. I don't have it fully. I'm unlovable. I'm missing love.
Yeah.
It's missing. So therefore, you're going to be reaching out because you think you're missing it. You're naturally going to be looking at it from, you know, I want it from you. But when the story isn't operating and that movement isn't operating, that I need it from others. And then somehow in there, there's a capacity to give it more. It's just because it's natural. You're not even giving it. It's your own being. It really is. If you've processed enough stuff there, it's your own being that you're giving. You're not really, it's not about doing things. I mean, you might do things or loving, but it's something else. It's about, very hard to explain. It's the absence of the needing love. That's what it is. When there's an absence of it, something else shows up. But doesn't need to be affirmatively said, because once you experience it, you're experiencing it, you know. Other than to show people there is a way, just to say it that way, there's a way. But I think everybody has a different path, I suppose. But mine is, as long as you still believe fundamentally that you're unlovable at some level, that story seeks to confirm itself. If you don't understand that, speaking of context, that story seeks to confirm itself. So it's never going to be able to fully give love, like, because it needs it. It's missing it. Programming is.
Yeah. Actually, also David Hawkins was talking about this again, levels, and saying that some level is like some exchange, is a transaction, you know. Hey, give me that, I'll give you this, and we're gonna be cool. But that's not, it's not real love. It's some transactional thing.
Transactional, yeah. And I think that starts to end again when we no longer believe that we're these core identities, because it's all transactional at that level. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't work. That's the whole thing. What I found is, even though it's a transaction, it actually doesn't work, because for me, again, the transaction would be is if I believe this about myself, I'm going to get love or something. But actually, it's the opposite. If I believe this about myself, I'm never going to actually feel that love. I'm always going to feel deficient. So even though it's transactional, it ends up, we don't get the payoff. If you pay attention, we don't get the payoff in the transaction, ultimately.
Like the hungry ghost thing, like that, it comes, but it doesn't go. It doesn't. And some of my teachers from non-duality, I was coming to them with relationship problems, like, oh, this and that. And somehow one of them was, he could see through it. He wouldn't answer my relationship problems, but he told me, like, we are not here to find love, man. To find loving harmony. You are not here to find a harmonious relationship. You are here to find harmony within yourself.
Oh, perfect.
What?
Perfect.
Yeah, and he told me, like, it's very hard to have a good relationship if you have not found the source of peace, harmony, and love within oneself. Because then I'm going for a sense of lack. And then the other person is coming from a sense of lack, and it's not going to work. So he said the prerequisite for having a good, loving relationship is to not need love.
For a good relationship, many people are getting in a relationship. That's not a prerequisite, but that's.
And actually, you know, Rupert was saying once that he said that, you know, like marriage vows. He said, okay, we vow, but you know, and the vow should be this thing like, hey, I don't need you. I don't need you. If you have that in place, then you can have some loving, conscious relationship, you know?
Yeah. And then there's fear of losing.
Yeah.
Thinking that the vow is, if I now have to have you forever, I can't lose you. There's a piece of it too, because as in my relationship I looked early on and, like, I'm not afraid of losing him, just to see what was there. And just, there was a little bit there because it was one of the first relationships. It was a really, really powerful connection. And there was a little bit there from childhood, but since then it's just made a better relationship, just like the person said, because that's the harmony within myself, is like recognizing there's still something here that I need to look at. around fear of losing someone. It was very light, actually. I don't have the attachment wound, just something there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a good one too.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to love repression, as I look into this, my subconscious, that is like, well, the child psychology. Although, yes, the baby didn't have thoughts, but there's consciousness is intelligent. Even if it didn't have thoughts, there is understanding. So
Yeah.
the child developed this. Well, I can't trust this because it's gonna go away. Basically, that's it. And I don't want to feel again the loss of it.
It's actually more intelligent than our functional mind. That's really intelligent, actually, what it's
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. So
Sorry to get sidetracked.
so I was close to it. Close. So like close to it. So I had a whole series of, many people come to me, they meet all these people who are toxic and nasty, and they abuse them and hurt them, and they get hurt through a relationship. And I didn't have that. I had beautiful, intelligent, loving women on a spiritual path who liked me, and they wanted to love me. And I was like, no. In I didn't know what was there, but it was like, no. So I didn't let it in. Basically, I didn't let it in. And then with the understand, and I thought that no means like, well, she's not the one. So the next and next and next, so I can next, and then it caught up with me, man. I realized that yeah. So I'm
Is no
in
one.
the trenches with
You
this. What?
recognize there's not going to be a one.
It's not going to be the one as long as I have the love repression. And also talking about repression, we say, okay, I repress joy and anger, but this is like an ocean. You can't just repress a wave here. So I think if you repress some, you are messing with the whole thing. So
Totally.
if I don't allow sadness, I can't have love. You know what I mean? I think it's all linked.
Totally. I mean, I didn't even do that much love repression. A little bit during the chronic pain. I did mostly anger repression, but there's definitely a shift in the area of love we've just talked about today from doing that. They're definitely, in some ways, the languaging is just not working, because this is, to me, like, this is energetic. It's before language. It's natural part of being human. And then the mind comes in and says, this is love, this is anger. But somehow we haven't grasped what this really is. It's like it's our energetic expression of what we are somehow. And we're trying to categorize it, but as you say, you can't, the mind can't, because you can't put a lid on these energies as if they're separate and distinct and not related in that way. Yeah.
I could see the benefit for this work, the love repression or grief repression, and facing these things, that then more effortlessly, I could see that what they are saying, non-duality, is true, that actually we are deep here in love. Like this, I remember I was walking somewhere, the hot springs, and there was these flowers, and I was like, oh, thank you. So I could see that this is loving me. This is like whole universe. So I could see, without like going into deep kind of mental manipulation, was more effortless, that just from the woman. I mean, the woman is a source of love, but the coffee and the whole everything is loving me, and I couldn't see it,
Yeah, the clouds were there, so the love repression clouds are there, and you got a little parting, and it's like, oh, this is simple and effortless, and then the mind comes back.
I could see the actual clouds. I was like, oh my God, man, this is like such a gift. So then I have effortless gratitude.
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh my God, thank you,
man.
I have this electric tap. I mean, I don't know, faucet. It's not mine, but anyway, you press, it's like, oh my God, just water like this. I mean, our ancestors, they had to work hard, and I'm pressing this button, and you know, so this
Yes.
effortless gratitude, effortless love, effortless more joy. So I guess if you are really intrigued by this kind of stuff we're talking about, I suggest you come to Killer Bee members area.
Thank you.
Because I mean, not to it's not. Also, somebody shared with me recently, hey man, there's all this money. I guess, you know, if we've been in a cult where the cult leader asks a lot of money, um, then it may seem like you're asking money. But I told this person, dude, it's like $30 a month for like meetings and resources. I mean, I don't see any other better. I mean, I lead a group, it costs $30 a group. No. So anyway, I was telling, so it's very good price, very good deal.
Yeah, it's a very good price, but I think some people don't join because they don't like communities either, and because they've been involved in cults, and so
Yeah.
we have to watch that too, because we don't want to create an atmosphere like that. Just people need to be able to come and go. I always say to people, come and go as you please. Like nobody's going to have you stay here. Nobody's going to try to get you to stay. You feel free to come and go. And if you have some issues around that, you might just do some sessions with a facilitator or somebody out there that can unhook you from, because you don't want to let your past experiences dictate that all organizations are running like that.
Yeah.
You know, because then you'll deprive yourself of something there maybe. But thank you for bringing up the money thing. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I appreciate also in the meetings, it's freedom. I do this in my circles. It used to be, hey, these stars like this, I need you to commit to come 10 times. I'm like, fuck this, man. I don't need commitment.
No, you don't want to go. If you feel committed, who wants to go? It's like being obligated to visit your family. Like you keep going, but like if you want to visit your family, then that's fun. That's good. You want to go, but if you feel obligated, it's not. Yeah.
It's like the love, you know, I want you to come that if you are interested and you resonate with this, and because that will be the agent for your transformation, your love of healing, love of truth, love of whatever, we don't know what. So come with that. This, I want you to commit to this. This is going to kill it. So you can come, not come. You can come late. You can come early. You can go, whatever.
You get it. You get angry. You can talk about your addictions. You can talk about your shame.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to create a community where you can be yourself. Some of us have to work on that a little bit before we can be ourselves, but we're trying to hold that container for that as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this, the platform and the people. You know, I don't know, I would be part of these meetings, and for a long time I couldn't attend live because it was way too early, but I would just watch these videos with the people there, and I felt that I know them because they were so real. You were real, they were real. I developed some sense of family without even meeting them. And anyway, I was surprised that at some point I decided to book some sessions to do some repression work, and I chose, you know, Toshi, and I never talked to him before, never. But I really felt like we are buddies already. So it's amazing because, you know, with a therapist, you have to build rapport, do all kind of stuff before you go into the worst Shark Tank. And I was like, I hired this guy I never talked to for going the Shark Tank, and just because you created this container where it's allowed, everything is allowed and welcomed, they're not controlling the thing. I mean, of course there are some parameters, and it's very rare, so keep it up, man.
And I did not pay Mihai to say that, just so you know. I did not.
Yeah, he didn't pay me. All right, Scott.
All right. Love you, man.
Yeah, I love you too. Thank you.